Hello again, everybody. Now we're going to move on to the third category. We've already covered the biology of addiction. We've talked about the opioids. I'm going to move on to the depressants now. The main product in the category known as depressants, one of the main ones, is alcohol. Obviously, a lot of psych issues going on here and people taking this. We're not going to get into that so much. Alcohol is ethanol. Obviously, your book, which we're going to follow here on 159, talks about whiskey, wine, and beer and the different effects of these products, which is very, very interesting. As far as looking at the effects, you can see in table 5.3, it decreases alertness, it causes some sedation, and at higher doses, once again, it can cause respiratory failure. What I want to go into, and what I know a fair amount about, is not the psychological implications, but the neurobiology. If you turn to page 160, and if you look at the picture again, notice on your handout, I actually put after the heroin overdose abstract, the GABA A receptor. It seems the way alcohol works is by working with the GABA receptor. Remember, there are receptor subtypes. The GABA A is one. There's a GABA B receptor as well. And so it seems when people drink alcohol, there are these GABA A receptors in the cerebellum. Remember, the cerebellum is with movement. And when you take drink alcohol, there are a couple of different activities. You can see that it actually allows sodium ions to open up, so there'll be sodium ions coming in, an influx of sodium. Let's see. What else do we want to say? There'll be more glutamate that's being activated. No, I'm not saying this right. Let me try that again. Alcohol inhibits the movement of sodium ions across the membrane, so basically it'll have an inhibitory effect. Basically what happens is when alcohol binds, and if you look at that picture there, it causes a chloride influx. You'll get more chloride coming in, and chloride is Cl negative, and that'll cause more IPSBs, so it'll basically reduce action potentials. So that's what alcohol basically does with the chloride ion. When it does this, you basically get a negative effect as far as behavior is concerned. It looks like they also talk about alcohol working on the glutamate receptor. You don't need to worry about too much of that in this particular situation, although it says what you get more glutamate activity. Now we'll just stick with the alcohol working at the GABA receptor here. So that is the main area of neurobiology. But I guess another take-home point that I wanted to share with you, we know it's not a good idea to drink alcohol with some of these other substances that we'll go over in a minute or so, barbiturates, benzodiazepines, and if you take these, there's a drug interaction because they're all working on the same receptor level. So if you take them, once again, you might get respiratory depression to such a point that you'll stop breathing. So alcohol causes this particular effect at the GABA A receptor. If you turn your page to the next part of the appendix, I thought it would be an interesting abstract to share with you. It's the abstract by Shen here on their novel anti-alcohol intoxication medication. Let's see what we want to say here, or we want to look at here. Let me actually save this. I want to go through. We can go through it here with you. If you look at this particular product, you can see what they're working on here is a product which, if you take it, might actually help out with drinking too much alcohol. So they took these rats, they gave them alcohol. We know alcohol binds, if you look at the abstract, to GABA A receptors. And apparently when they took this DHM product, it blocked that. It was an antagonist to this GABA A receptor. It blocked this effect so that the negative effect of alcohol could be reduced. They also talked about the benzodiazepine receptors and others. So the idea here is if you could block this receptor, this GABA A receptor and this chloride influx by giving DHM, maybe if a rat is having too much alcohol, you could kind of detoxify it in a good way. Can you imagine all the excitement about this particular abstract? Sobering up pill? Well, I got to tell you, I've got a little bit of concern about this. This has actually been done a few times before, and one drug company actually developed a product that seemed to reverse the effects of alcohol. but it turned out they never brought the product to market. Can you imagine the liability problems with doing this? What if somebody goes to a party and they're about to drink all sorts of alcohol and they take your little pill and it doesn't work and they're in a car accident? The liability issues here are significant. So the idea that somebody would actually do this and take this really hasn't been purported, but certainly in your case you can read this abstract and do with it what you may, but the idea is certainly there that this may happen. So that's our little part on alcohol. So much for the abstracts. We'll continue on now, going kind of back to the book, and talk about 4 and 5 here: barbiturates, benzodiazepines, and stimulants. For barbiturates, once again, we talk about some of the products you actually found in your sleep unit. Do you remember that? And they were once again binding to the GABA receptor. So barbiturates were identified a long time ago. They are very, very strong. Phenobarbital, secobarbital. They work very powerfully. They really knock you out, but they're very, very strong. People don't use those as much anymore. Once again, they bind at the GABA receptor site, and actually your book talks about giving somebody a Mickey, which is what used to be used. What a Quaalude is another type of product, a non-barbiturate, sedative, hypnotic drug. Now, instead of those types of products, what people take a lot more are benzodiazepines. They're often called anxiolytic, freeing of anxiety. So things like Valium and now Xanax. The reason these are used, and actually, well, we'll talk about the reason they're used in a minute or so. So these products actually work by binding once again to the GABA A receptor, and they reduce the anxiety. Now, even more, they've developed newer products that maybe are not quite as addictive. Sleeping products, Ambien, Sonata, which once again seem to work at the GABA A receptor, not at the sites identified previously, but they have sedative effects basically and can help people out. The problem obviously is that if people are on these products, how do they end up getting off of these products? They're not nearly as addictive as some of the older ones. And finally, going back to information about barbiturates and benzodiazepines, I want to just talk to you a little bit about why people use the benzos a lot more than the barbiturates. The concept of a safety margin. A safety margin, the idea behind a safety margin is they've done studies looking at what kind of dose can you take of a product that will be safe for you versus what kind of dose is going to end up killing you. And it turns out that the safety margin for the barbiturates is much smaller. That's the distance between what is effective and works for you versus what is an overdose. And so the safety margin for the barbiturates is much smaller, meaning if you just take a little bit too much, it could kill you. For the benzodiazepines, things like Valium and Librium and Xanax, the safety margin is much larger, so that's why they're used. They can be controlled a lot more, and they don't have nearly as many side effects as the barbiturates. So once again, these products are used a lot for anxiety, sometimes for sleeping, and once again, the whole issue here of receptor specificity. People take these products for various things. It might be a very difficult thing to say that just taking this product is going to work on this receptor and fix this behavior, because obviously when people take the benzodiazepines or barbiturates, they're taking them maybe for anxiety, but they cause people to be sleepy as well, and they might change some pain perception issues as well. So that covers number 3, the depressants, alcohol, as well as barbiturates and benzodiazepines.